Okay, in this lesson we are going to be subtracting integers. Just to remind you of the SE 6.3D, students are expected to add, subtract, multiply, and divide integers fluently. This is a readiness standard, so you should be prepared as a sixth grader to, again, fluently subtract integers. Now, the key to subtracting integers is actually to change it to addition by adding the opposite. We already know how to add integers, so again what we're going to do is turn these subtraction problems into addition problems by adding the opposite. Let's take a look at some examples to see how this works. Okay, example 1, we have 10 minus 25. I'm just going to rewrite the problem here, 10 minus 25. Now technically we could read this as 10 minus, and this would be positive 25. So we have a positive 10 minus a positive 25. Well, we want to change this to an addition problem. We can do that by making this addition, but we got to be sure that we add the opposite. Well, the opposite of a positive 25 is a negative 25. Now our problem reads 10 plus negative 25. You might would see it written like this. And again, I showed you yesterday that, or I showed you in a previous lesson, that when you are adding integers and you have a positive plus a negative, that the positive and negatives are competing against each other. But when you think about the answer, the larger absolute value, which would be the 25, is a negative, so your answer is going to be negative. If you think about it on a number line, if you're at 10 positives that move to the right, but then you have 25 negatives that move to the left, you're going to end up on the negative side. Well, so we know it's negative, but how do we define the value? Well, what we can do is just subtract the absolute values of these two integers. So we can take 25 and subtract 10, and when we do that, we get 15. So our answer is negative 15. Okay, let's take a look at another one. Example 2, we have negative 15 minus a 10. And if we use our parentheses, we would realize that this is subtracting a positive 10. The opposite of subtracting a positive 10 is to add a negative 10. So we could maybe rewrite it as negative 15 plus negative 10. Well, in this one we're adding integers, but the signs are the same. If the signs are the same, you simply just add the two numbers, or you add, you could add the absolute value. The absolute value of a negative 15 is 15, and the absolute value of negative 10 is 10, and 15 plus 10 is 25. And we know that both signs were negative, so the sum is also negative. It will not change. They were on the same team, the negative team. Okay, example 3. This is a little bit more challenging. We have a negative 128 minus, and then in parentheses, a negative 245. Again, we're going to change this to an addition problem by adding the opposite. Well, if we're subtracting a negative 245, we're going to add a positive 245. So if we rewrite the problem, it's negative 128 plus positive 245. We don't have to write the positive. We know that it's positive if it doesn't have a negative sign. So now we're back to an addition problem of integers, but we have a negative 128 plus a positive 245. So it's as if the negatives and the positives are competing against each other, and the side, the integer with the largest absolute value is 245, and it's the positive, so you know your answer is positive. Now, we don't actually have to write the positive, but again, what I've taught you is when you're adding integers and the signs are different, you can subtract the absolute values. So the absolute value of 245 is 245, and we're going to subtract the absolute value of negative 128 is positive 128. And now we simply need to subtract these two numbers. And when we do this, we will see that we get 117. And remember, there were more positives than there were negatives, so our answer is positive. So it's 117. And again, we do not have to identify it as positive because it's understood to be positive if there's not a negative sign. Okay, one more example. Example 4. We have 254, and we're going to subtract negative 146. Again, keep in mind the parentheses are here just to separate the minus sign and the negative for the 146. Okay, so again, the key to solving subtraction problems is to add the opposite. So instead of subtracting a negative 146, we're going to add a positive 146. So now this simply becomes 254 plus 146. So the signs are the same. You're simply adding the values together, 254 plus 146. And when you do that, you're going to get 400. And again, this is a positive 400. Okay, that's a look at solving subtraction of integer problems by adding the opposite.